Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to episode 2 of Spooky Snack. We're just gonna go ahead and hop right into today's story because I gave a lengthy, intro last time. So today I want to just get into the story. For today's story, I'm going to be talking about the Monte Vista Hotel. The first time that I heard about the Monte Vista Hotel was actually off of Mikey, aka Glamangor's YouTube channel a few years back. Mikey did like a Halloween series where she went to a bunch of haunted places, and one of the places she went to was the Monte Vista. So that's where I first heard about this hotel and some of the cases, and I thought it was interesting, but after doing research on this hotel, I did not realize how many ghost stories they have at the hotel. Now, this is one of those hotels that does market itself as a haunted hotel, or a hotel that is supposed to be haunted. I'm definitely one of those people that's kind of on the fence about places like that, because sometimes, places that purposely market themselves as haunted might do some things to encourage people to actually think it's haunted, or just play up the haunted factor. That's just my opinion. I don't think that about every place. I do think that some of the places that are known to be haunted are actually haunted, but I also haven't been to any of the haunted places that I really want to go to. Like, the top place I really want to go is the Queen Mary, which is one of those places that is marketed as a haunted location. To be honest, all of the evidence and cases and people just recording when they go, I do believe that it actually is haunted. Some places are marketed as haunted, and you can be skeptical about how legitimate it is and how much the business might try to encourage that belief. And then there's other places that are known to be haunted that are actually haunted. I'm not necessarily claiming that the Monte Vista Hotel is making up any of this stuff. Once again, I have not been. I do not know. I'm just reporting on what I've found and what's really interesting. With this specific case, I'm going to give you guys the history of the hotel first, and then I will give you the stories, just because it makes more sense. Let's get into the history of the Monte Vista Hotel. So during the 1920s, there was a huge tourism boom that struck Flagstaff by complete surprise. There was a huge uptick in tourists that were visiting Flagstaff, so the residents decided that they wanted to fundraise for a first-class hotel, because they felt like most of the hotels that they had in the area were all pretty outdated and run down, and they didn't have any more luxurious first-class hotels to encourage this tourism boom to keep going and to encourage people to spend money and help raise money in the town. The community got together and actually raised the money themselves to develop their first-class hotel. The community together was able to raise $200,000, which converted to today's money is equivalent to around $2.7 million. The hotel ended up being 4 stories high with 73 rooms, and was originally named the Community Hotel in commemoration of the community and the citizens coming together to create this hotel. Later on, they actually hosted a contest to have the name changed. I couldn't find any particular reason why they wanted to change the name. I'm assuming they just wanted to name it something different. So they had a contest actually to have the name changed, and a 12-year-old won and decided to name it Monte Vista, aka Mountain View, named after the San Francisco peaks. So now the official Hotel Monte Vista officially opened its doors on New Year's Day, 1927. So once Prohibition hit, the Hotel Monte Vista wasn't afraid to break a few of those Prohibition rules. The hotel's lounge actually became the town's speakeasy, and a lot of the citizens still wanted to spend their time in the lounge and get their favorite alcoholic drinks. So the hotel decided to keep things a little hush-hush and keep the lounge going. Now, there's actually tunnels that were dug underground in Flagstaff, and which was very common in a lot of Western towns at this time. This provided a hidden way for people and goods, both legal and illegal, to travel to and from the lounge and the town without law enforcement catching wind of it. And as the town grew, so did these tunnels. Among other businesses, the Monte Vista had access to these underground tunnels. And the larger alcoves of the tunnels were used for opium dens, moonshine distilleries, slot machines, and easy transportation for other illegal drugs and alcohol to and from the speakeasy. The Hotel Monte Vista was raided in 1931 and forced to close until Prohibition was repealed 2 years later. Criminals would continue to use the tunnel to get to the hotel without law enforcement noticing them. Later on, during the 1940s and 50s, the Sedona and Oak Creek Canyon areas became really popular to film westerns for Hollywood filmmakers. Because of this, a lot of actors, crew, and others on set for these films would come and stay at the Hotel Monte Vista. Some notable Hollywood stars that had stayed at the hotel include Jane Russell, Gary Cooper, Spencer Tracy, John Wayne, and Bing Crosby. John Wayne is actually the first reported person to have noticed a ghost at the hotel. So if there were any before then, like from when the hotel opened up until when John Wayne reported it in the 1950s, there's no record of anyone reporting anything before that, but the first recorded case is John Wayne, which we'll get into his experience a little bit later. The hotel was owned by the public until the 1960s, when it was sold to a public investor to keep up with the maintenance. This made it the longest publicly owned hotel in American history. The hotel was added to the National Register of Historic Places around 1973, and then it was restored to its former glory and its former design around 2018. So, with the history of the hotel in mind, let's get into some of the notable ghost stories of the hotel. So this first story is a little odd. It is about a guy that is known as the Meat Man. This specific story takes place in room 220. In the 1980s, there was a long-term renter that, for one reason or another, had the reputation of hanging raw meat from the chandelier in his hotel room. I could not find any information on if he was like a butcher or if it was, I'm assuming and kind of hoping that it's his own personal meats, you know, like that he's hanging from the ceiling. But yes, his reputation was that he would hang raw animal meat. Don't worry, it was not like human meat or something crazy like that, but that he would hang raw meat from the chandelier in his room. So like I said, he was a long-term renter. So one day, after noticing that they hadn't heard from the man in a while, they sent an employee up to the guy's room to check on him. When the employee entered his room, he found the guy dead. The guy had been there for 3 days. He had been left in his room dead for 3 days before someone found him. Unfortunately, there are no reports on how he died. I couldn't find any information on like what happened to him, if it was like natural causes, if it was a suspected homicide, a suspected suicide. There's no found information I could find, at least. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how the dude died or like why or if there's a case on it. So I guess you could say that this case is a little unsolved. Sorry, I'm a huge fan. Ryan, Shane, I love you. Not too long after this, the hotel needed to prep the room for the next renters to come in. So they sent up a maintenance man to fix up a few things. So after he went up there, started fixing some things up, he realized that he needed some more supplies, so he was going to run to the store. He turned the lights off, locked the door, left, wasn't gone for very long, came back, and apparently the TV was on full blast And the previously perfectly made bed, the sheets had been ripped off and scattered across the room. Guests who stay in this room claim to feel cold hands touching them when they sleep, or to have the TV turn on out of nowhere. Another room that's reportedly supposed to be very active is room 305. There are numerous reports that the rocking chair in this room will move on its own. There are also numerous reports from the outside of the hotel. You see a woman sitting in that rocking chair looking out the window. Now, this is especially interesting because apparently there was a woman who was a long-term renter who lived in that room and would constantly sit in that rocking chair looking out the window. And no one ever really knew what she was ever looking at. She was just always, looking out the window. She was probably that nosy old lady who knew everybody's business, always knew what was going on, And I feel like especially at a hotel like this where it seems like there's a lot happening, a lot of interesting stuff going on, she probably saw some stuff. So guests and housekeepers report seeing the rocking chair move on its own, as well as hearing strange knocks coming from the closet, which is never fun. Some even claim that if staff ever moves the rocking chair away from the window, it will mysteriously end up back in its original place, looking out the window. Okay, my brows are loud and proud today. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm trying to brush this out like crazy. Now, this next story is a really sad one, and unfortunately, again, I could not find any reports for confirmation on these two women or even the guy who committed the crime. So honestly, I love all the stories, but the one bummer I had was not being able to find much evidence to prove that these things for sure happened. But it is supposedly reported that all of these deaths are actual reported cases. I just personally couldn't find them. Maybe I'm just bad at finding them. So Flagstaff's red light district was back in the day just 2 blocks away from the Monte Vista Hotel. So sex work was very common to take place in the hotel rooms. In the early 1940s, 2 sex workers were brought back to room 306. Now, like I said, this is a really sad story because unfortunately, both of these women were murdered by the man who brought them back to the room. Now, I couldn't find any information on who these women were, what their names are, and I'm really hoping it's just me not being able to find it and not that it wasn't taken seriously, but unfortunately I couldn't find the specific case, but it is supposed to be an actual reported incident that occurred. So both women were murdered by the man who brought them back to the room, and the even crazier part is that this guy threw their bodies out of the window, out of the 3rd-story window of the hotel room, threw their bodies just out onto the street. So guests have reported that while sleeping in the middle of the night, they will wake up to the feeling of as if they're being watched, and men frequently feel as though there is a hand covering their mouth or their throats. This is believed to be mimicking the way that these poor women were killed, and that they are hostile towards men, obviously, because they were murdered by this crazy, terrible guy. Another popular report is of a phantom bellboy. Now, this is where the John Wayne story comes back into play. So guests report hearing knocks at their hotel room doors and hearing a faint voice say, "room service." When they go to answer the door, there's nobody there. This is believed to be the phantom of a bellboy. Now, I couldn't find any reports of a bellboy or any hotel employee passing away at the hotel or necessarily nearby to give any validity to this story, but this is the ghost that John Wayne also claimed to see back in the 1950s. Now, when John Wayne experienced this ghost, he did say that this ghost came across very friendly and he was not frightened by him at all. And honestly, it seems as though the most frightening thing about this ghost is just when people claim to see him standing outside of room 210, which I believe is the room that John Wayne was staying in when he saw the phantom bellboy as well. Reports claim to say that the bellboy is a young man walking amongst the halls in a red bellboy's uniform with brass buttons, just walking up and down the hallways. Now, like I said, unfortunately, I couldn't find any background on this ghost or this story or any explanation for it. That seems to be the running theme with a lot of the stories at this hotel, which is why I brought up the whole not knowing how much validity behind these stories there really are. Another really popular ghost story of the hotel is the ghost of a bank robber. Now, supposedly, in 1970, there was 3 men who robbed a nearby bank in Flagstaff. During the robbery, one bank guard was able to shoot one of the robbers, but all 3 did end up getting away. Now, despite one of the robbers being injured, the 3 of them decided to go get some celebratory drinks for a job well done at the Monte Vista lounge. And unfortunately for the man that was shot, he would be having his last drink at that very lounge. The man ended up passing away at the lounge, and it is said that his ghost still visits the hotel's lounge. Both hotel staff as well as patrons at the lounge have claimed to either hear or see the ghost of the robber still there enjoying his drink. There's been reports of glasses moving, bar stools moving, and staff has even gotten accustomed to, in the morning sometimes, hearing a hello or a good morning when they come in for their morning shift. So at least he seems like a friendly ghost. It's also a pretty common occurrence to see shadow people roaming around the various halls of the hotel. Hotel staff also report hearing the haunting cries of a baby down in the basement. The cries reportedly are so loud that a lot of times the hotel staff runs back upstairs because they just can't stand hearing the crying. Though the cries of the baby are very real to hotel staff, there are no cases to explain why this phenomenon would be happening in the basement. On a lighter note, hotel staff and visitors often report seeing a ghost couple dancing in the cocktail lounge. They're reported to be seen in formal attire, smiling and laughing and dancing eternally together. So at least, there's one happy couple enjoying their time at the hotel. Otherwise, those are all of the main stories of the Monte Vista Hotel. So I'm going to pop on a pair of lashes real quick and then we will close out this story. All right, my friends, and that is the haunted stories of the Monte Vista Hotel. Now, my personal thoughts, I'll be honest, these stories are super interesting and the cases that have occurred there are also really crazy and really sad and do add up and explain, if these things really did happen, I wouldn't be surprised if they were haunted. Like the 2 sex workers getting murdered and thrown out the window, the, woman who constantly sat in the rocking chair, the weird guy hanging meat from his chandelier. These stories make sense to lead to a haunted hotel, but as someone who, although I do definitely believe in ghosts, I am still somebody that does really enjoy seeing some form of evidence or at least stories to back up these stories. Like news stories reporting on these different, the robbery that happened. I'd love to see actual evidence of that robbery happening and the man dying in the lounge and all this kind of stuff. But unfortunately, like I said, I wasn't able to find any of the evidence to prove that these cases actually happened. So because of that, it does make me a little hesitant to completely say that I believe all of these stories. Now, like I said, they all are super interesting. And if you have been to the Monte Vista or if you have any experiences there, please let me know in the comments down below what your stories are. I'm really interested to see, have you seen or experienced any of these ghosts or any of these stories? And if you can find any articles or evidence that show that these murders actually did happen, or any of this crazy stuff that happened, please feel free to link it down below. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed episode 2 of Spooky Snack. Let me know what you guys thought of the story. Do you think that the Monte Vista Hotel is actually haunted? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Stay tuned for episode 3 of Spooky Snack coming next Friday, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.